there are some weird differences between the RTX 5060 and 5070 configurations of Alienware's 16X Aurora that I didn't expect. The 16X is supposed to be their premium mid-range gaming laptop, sitting just above the lower tier Aurora 16 without the X. But are the 16X's differences enough to justify a higher price? Let's find out if the X is worth it in this review. This higher tier Aurora has an aluminum lid and the interior still feels like plastic, just like the lower tiered non-X version. But the bottom panel gets upgraded to solid metal on the 16X. It's got this dark blue finish they're calling Interstellar Indigo, and the iridescent logo on the lid looks different depending on how the light hits it. Build quality feels great overall. The keyboard hardly flexes under pressure, but the lid bends a bit more than I'd like under force. But it feels fine during normal use and doesn't flop around while typing. You can open it one-handed, but you'll probably want to avoid that as the front lifts up, presumably due to it being heavier towards the back and not balanced. And the screen goes the full way back. The hinges don't flex if you push it back too far, and they feel smooth and sturdy, even when ripping the lid open fast. Fingerprints don't look too bad. This is after a couple of weeks of use, and it's relatively easy to clean with a microfiber cloth. It's a little thicker compared to the cheaper non-X version, but it doesn't feel massive or anything. Both laptops by themselves weigh around 5.6 pounds or 2.5 kilos, and then there's a bigger gap with the chargers included, as the higher spec 5070 version has a fairly large charger. Both of my 16Xs basically weigh the same as the cheaper non-X version, and they're not much heavier compared to the M16R2 from last gen, but they're significantly lighter compared to Alienware's top-of-the-line Area 51 model. The 5070 configuration weighs about 7% more than the 5060 version due to the bigger charger. It's quite large. There are definitely smaller 280-watt bricks Dell could have used here. Both of my configurations appear to be identical on the spec sheet, excluding the GPU, but they're actually using different screens and SSDs, which result in some interesting differences. The Aurora is available with lower or higher tier specs depending on how you customize it with the link below the video. And if it has a good sale, we'll have it listed on our gaminglaptop.deals website so you can get it at the best price. Link below. The keyboard has one zone of RGB backlighting, and all keys and secondary functions get lit up. Key brightness can be adjusted between two levels or turned off with the F9 shortcut, but the keys could have been a bit brighter. You can change the effects as well as adjust speed and control the brightness with more increments through the Alienware FX tab of the Alienware Command Center software. The keyboard feels nice to type on with slightly clicky key presses and 1.4mm of key travel. The only thing we didn't like was the tiny arrow keys. The power button is part of the keyboard, and by default, an accidental press will put it to sleep, but you can change that behavior in Windows. The plastic touchpad is on the smaller side, but it works well and has an accurate click, though one of them had a noticeably louder click than the other, and I'm not sure why. Port selection is decent and almost the same as the lower tier non-X, except this 16X has support for Thunderbolt 4. There aren't any ports on the right, so no chance of cables getting in the way of your mouse hand.
Did you just assume my dominant hand?
We've got a good mix of Type-C ports that connect to the discrete and integrated graphics, something the non-X was missing. Connecting directly to the NVIDIA GPU means more FPS in games and VR support, while connecting to the Intel graphics means quieter fans if you're doing casual work. Getting inside requires unscrewing 10 Phillips head screws, though only 8 come out of the panel, and they're all the same length. The 2 at the back corners don't come out, and help open the laptop by lifting the panel. But I still needed pry tools to stand a chance of opening it. I'll leave a link to these ones I use below. Inside, we've got the battery down the front, 2 memory slots just above near the middle, the installed M.2 slot on the right, a spare M.2 M.2 storage slot on the left, and the Wi-Fi 7 card above the installed SSD. Wi-Fi performance was in line with other laptops that use the same MediaTek card, though a bit faster compared to the non-X Aurora. It looks like only Alienware's top-end model comes with faster Wi-Fi. My RTX 5060 laptop came with a 1TB PCIe Gen 4 SSD, and speeds were decent, while my RTX 5070 version came with a larger 2TB PCIe Gen 4 SSD with similar speeds. The upgrade score is about as good as it can be from a 16-inch gaming laptop, as we've got 2 removable memory slots, removable Wi-Fi, and 2 M.2 storage slots that can fit drives with chips on both sides. The only reason the SCAR 16 is a point ahead is because it doesn't even need tools to open. The speakers are found towards the front on the left and right sides, and they sound decent for a gaming laptop. They're pretty clear, there's a little bass, and there's only a little wrist rest vibration at full volume. The Latencymon results were bad in our 5-minute idle test. The 16X is powered by a 6-cell 96Wh battery. The BIOS has some options that appear to limit the battery's maximum charge level, which should help it last longer, as keeping it fully charged all the time can degrade it. Unfortunately, there's no way in software to automatically lower the screen's refresh rate when you unplug the charger, so all battery testing was done with the screens at 240Hz. Battery life was quite good for gaming laptops with Intel HX processors, but neither of them could compete with the lower-tier non-X version, which uses a lower-end processor that presumably uses less power. Still, both laptops lasted around 7 hours in the YouTube video playback test, and were ahead of other Alienware models we've tested. It lost 18% of its battery charge while asleep for 24 hours. But this isn't a fair comparison with the other laptops, as it depends on the size of the laptop's battery. Here's how much battery power was lost on average per hour, which is a fair comparison, and it was a fairly middle-of-the-road result, and similar to Alienware's higher-end Area 51. Let's check out thermals next. The CPU and GPU are covered by a standard cooler with a heat pipe shared between them, though the motherboard is reversed, so repasting would be more involved. Air comes in through the vents above the keyboard, and from these holes on the bottom panel rather than from directly above the fans, and then gets exhausted out of the left and right sides, and from both corners out the back. The Alienware Command Center software lets us swap between different performance modes, which from lowest to highest are quiet, balanced, performance, high performance, and overdrive. There's also custom mode, which lets you change the GPU overclocks and GPU temperature limit, but that's it. High performance mode can only be enabled with the F6 shortcut key. I've got a problem with the software though. After a fresh boot, it takes over 1 minute and 20 seconds from opening the Command Center software until you can actually start changing performance modes. This is a ridiculous amount of time to wait compared to all other laptops out there. Well, except for their lower-tier non-X version, which took an extra 30 seconds. Maybe due to its lower-tier processor. I don't know, maybe I'm just impatient, but I think it's pathetic considering other laptops usually take a few seconds.
While we're on the topic of updates, after this laptop came out, there was an update to the VBIOS which improved the GPU power limit and performance in games, which is nice, if not something the laptop should have originally shipped with. But unfortunately, even with that update, my 5060 version maxed its GPU out at 70 watts instead of the expected 100 or so, even after applying all of Dell's updates. So we discovered a new problem with GPU power limits that the VBIOS update didn't fix.
Long story short, Dell found a bug with the 16X when paired with a specific version of the 96Wh battery. That's a new one for me, but after a few weeks, it was fixed in BIOS 1.3.7 after I reported it, which is why this video was delayed. We saw an 11% boost to average FPS after applying the fix, so if you get this laptop, make sure you've got all of Dell's updates installed for best performance. Alright, thermals. Let's start out with the RTX 5070 version. The internal temps are fine at idle. The rest of the results are from combined CPU and GPU stress tests,
which aim to represent a worst-case full-load scenario. The temps get warmer as we step up from lower to higher performance modes, but even the highest overdrive or high-performance modes aren't too bad. Closing the lid to dock the laptop was a little warmer, and using a basic metal stand appears warmer, but it's actually taking advantage of the additional airflow to perform better here. It's a similar deal with the cooling pad I test with, linked below. The CPU temp rockets up past 100 degrees Celsius with the cooling pad, though the GPU gets cooler as the pad's fans get faster. We can see why this is in the power levels being reached. The CPU power levels in blue get higher as the cooling pad fans go faster. Basically, the laptop seems to detect it's getting more air and better cooling, and puts that to work by converting it into more performance. Over 100 degrees on the CPU isn't ideal, but you can use the BIOS to lower the CPU's maximum temperature limit if you want to run it lower. It'll just be at the expense of lower performance. The NVIDIA control panel says the 5070 is full powered and can boost up to 115 watts, but we only saw this happen with the cooling pad. Otherwise, it ran at 100 watts with the CPU loaded up at the same time. We can also see that CPU power lowers a little with the lid closed, in addition to the temps getting a bit warmer too. So docking the laptop will lose a tiny bit of performance while also running warmer, and using the stand allows the CPU to use more power, resulting in higher clock speeds, which is why the laptop got warmer with the stand. As for the 5060 laptop, these highlighted temperatures are very similar to the higher spec 5070 version we just looked at, but high performance and overdrive modes are significantly cooler on the 5060. For context, the 5070 laptop in high performance mode hit 89 on the CPU and 82 on the GPU, so we're much cooler here. We can see that this is in part due to the CPU running at just 40 watts. Remember, it's got the same processor as the 5070 laptop, but that one was running the processor at 65 to 70 watts in overdrive and high performance modes respectively. I'm guessing the 5060 laptop has lower power limits due to its charger being smaller and providing 100 watts less. I did actually try plugging the bigger 280 watt charger into the 5060 laptop, but it didn't change its baked-in power limits. Anyway, the NVIDIA control panel says the 5060 can boost up to 115 watts, so it's a full-powered part, though we found it to max out at 95 watts with the CPU loaded up at the same time. Less power means less performance and lower CPU clock speeds compared to the 5070 laptop with its bigger charger and higher power limits. Here's how an actual game performs on the 5060 laptop with the different performance modes in use. I've got the native results in purple and DLSS upscaling on balanced in red to boost performance. Overdrive and high performance are pretty much the same, and performance mode doesn't lose much FPS compared to the higher modes. Playing on Type-C charge was a struggle. The CPU can use more power in a CPU-only workload like Cinebench, where the GPU is idle. There's basically no difference between balanced, performance, high performance, or overdrive modes. They all run the processor above 100 watts. This was on the 5060 laptop, which had lower power limits in the combined CPU and GPU stress tests earlier, but the 5070 laptop scored similarly, slightly lower actually. So the 5060 laptop still gets full power to the CPU despite its smaller charger when the GPU isn't in use. It's one of the lower results when compared against other laptops with the same processor. It's only ahead of Acer's thinner Helios Neo 16S. I suppose they didn't want it to step on the toes of the higher-end Area 51, which was scoring 14% higher in multi-core performance. Still, the 16X's multi-core score is 99% ahead of the lower-tier non-X version. The 16X is just going to perform way better in heavy workloads, so I guess X really does give it to you. Performance lowers if we unplug the charger and run on battery power, but it's now one of the better results out of the same selection of laptops, and close to that higher-end Area 51 model. As for keyboard temps, most laptops I test are in the low 30 degrees Celsius range on the keyboard at idle, and they're both close to this and felt cool. They both get warmer with the stress test running in quiet mode, but the middle only feels warm and isn't quite uncomfortable. It's a similar deal in balanced mode. The keyboard temps don't change much as the fan fans get louder to compensate for the higher power levels. The upper number and function keys are starting to feel uncomfortable. Performance mode is pretty similar. The hottest point is right at the back where the air vents are, but you don't need to touch there. When we get to high performance and overdrive modes, the 5060 is notably cooler. Remember, the 5060 version has lower CPU and GPU power limits, which means it naturally generates less heat. But for some reason, its fans are louder too. The hottest point of the keyboard was near the center towards the back, and the higher spec 5070 version was a fair bit warmer. But that's also because of the fan noise difference. Let's have a listen. The fans were completely silent at idle, and in most performance modes, there wasn't much of a difference between my 5060 and 5070 configurations, at least until we get to high performance or overdrive modes, where the 5060 laptop was significantly louder for reasons unknown. You'd think the 5070 laptop would be louder due to its higher CPU and GPU power limits and bigger charger, but that wasn't the case. Hopefully this is just a bug and gets fixed in an update, because I can't see why the 5060 model needs to be this loud. Of course, you don't have to use the louder overdrive or high performance modes to have a good time in games. Performance mode runs a fair bit quieter and still offers a good level of performance. It's just a better sweet spot. Alright, we need to talk about the screen, or should I say screens. Both of my laptops actually have different screen models. The RTX 5060 model came with a BOE panel, while the 5071 had an LG panel. Dell only lists one set of screen specs, so I'm guessing it's just luck of the draw based on supply limitations on Dell's side. Anyway, the color gamut from both panels was good, with only a minor difference in favor of the BOE panel that came with the RTX 5060. That BOE panel in red also got a fair bit brighter. Dell advertises the laptop with 500 nits of brightness, though the LG was slightly behind the mark. 500 nits puts these screens ahead of a lot of other laptops, including the cheaper non-X Aurora, or even the higher tier X16 or M18 from last generation, while their new top-end Area 51 isn't much different to the 16X, so a good result from the 16X. There was a little more backlight bleed from the BOE panel, but this will vary between every panel anyway, and it wasn't bad enough to notice when viewing darker content. There's a little difference in the average grey degree screen response time, with the BOE panel in the RTX 5060 laptop being slightly faster than the LG panel in the RTX 5070 laptop. But honestly, these are margin of error differences anyway. We could easily see these sorts of differences between panels that are the exact same model due to the panel lottery. They're both decent results for non-OLED panels, which are significantly faster. Basically, the screens are both fast and good for fast-paced gaming, and they're both significantly faster compared to the non-X version, which looked blurry. The 5070 laptop was a little faster in the total system latency test, which is the amount of time between a mouse click and when a gunshot fire shows up on screen in Counter-Strike 2. This is more likely to be a result of the higher tier GPU than the negligible differences between the screens. And again, they're both quite a bit faster than the cheaper non-X model. The 16X has advanced Optimus, unlike the non-X model, allowing you to automatically get better FPS in games without a reboot. It's also got the classic muck switch, but that needs a reboot, and considering it doesn't change which GPU the ports connect to, there's no real point using it. G-Sync is available with Optimus off, and Adaptive Sync is available from the integrated graphics when Optimus is on, so no screen tearing however you play.
There's a 1080p camera above the screen in the middle. It has IR for Windows Hello Face Unlock, and this is what it sounds like while typing on the keyboard.
Alright, let's see how well Alienware's 16X Aurora performs in games. We've tested them both with these settings. Cyberpunk 2077 was running great on both laptops at 1080p ultra settings, with the 5070 laptop reaching a 15% higher average FPS. Both laptops have higher resolution screens, and at 1440p, the 5060 laptop was close to 60 FPS, while the 5070 laptop was 14% ahead in average FPS. The 16X with 5060 was 18% ahead of Alienware's cheaper Aurora 16, due to that having a lower powered 5060 and lower tier processor. Alan Wake 2 was just above 60 FPS at 1080p high settings on the 5060, but the 5070 had a larger 21% lead here, and there's the same difference between them at 1440p too. This time, the 5060 16X was 11% ahead of the 16 non-X, or like 4 FPS faster. Black Myth Wukong was also just above 60 FPS at 1080p high settings on the 5060 laptop, while the 5070 laptop was 11% faster. The 5070 is only like 4 FPS faster than the 5060 at 1440p, though that still equates to 10% more performance. We've also got the results with ray tracing enabled and DLSS enabled. In many cases, the frame rates actually get better with DLSS, despite ray tracing being more resource intensive. So yeah, if you don't use RT, then FPS would be even higher. But I'll compare the 5060 and 5070 in 20 plus games at more reasonable settings in a future comparison, so get subscribed for that. The Aurora maxes out with RTX 5070 graphics, so just 8 gigs of VRAM, which is a concern with its 2560 by 1600 screen. Maybe not today or even for a while, depending on the games and setting levels that you play with. But it's definitely something worth thinking about for a gaming laptop you're going to be keeping for the next few years. As discussed in my VRAM video here with Steve from Hardware Unboxed. If you want more VRAM and to stay with Alienware, you'll be looking at their top-end Area 51 laptop, as that's their only option with the RTX 5070 Ti and 12 gigs of VRAM. Here are the 3D Mark results, with the 5060 in purple and the 5070 in red. Both perform fairly well in content creator workloads, though the performance gap in Adobe Photoshop and DaVinci Resolve wasn't that big considering the GPU difference. The BIOS doesn't look as flashy compared to other brands like Asus, but it's functional and there are a lot of options you can customize through here that aren't available in software, or other laptops for that matter. Linux support wasn't too bad. The main problem is that the keyboard brightness adjustment didn't work, but the lighting was on by default. Pricing and availability will change over time, so check the links below the video for updates and to see if there are any current sales. Because if the Aurora does have a good sale, we'll add it to our gaminglaptop.deals website. We update that every day to include all of the best sales, so make sure you check it out regularly to save money on your next gaming laptop with that link below. Right now in September, the Best Buy prices without sales running are a ripoff. $1,800 US for a 5060 and $2,100 for a 5070 is actually insane. The prices on Dell's website are much better, with the 5060 starting from $1,350, increasing to $1,450 with the higher tier Core Ultra 9 processor that my unit had, which honestly isn't worth the extra $100 if you're just gaming, while the 5070 version forces you to get the Core Ultra 9 and starts from $1,710. Those prices aren't too impressive considering we've had other gaming laptops like Lenovo's Legion series and HP's Omen series on the Deals website with 5060 graphics for around the $1,000 mark, while the 5070 versions have gone from $1,100 to $1,300. Maybe Dell just haven't run any great sales yet, but the price only matters if the Aurora is even worth considering. So let's break down the good and the bad to find out if it's worth it. Starting with the good, gaming performance is decent, build quality feels solid and is a nice step up over the non-X model, and the brighter and much faster screen is a big improvement over that one too. Battery life is good for an Intel HX system, the BIOS gives you plenty of control, and upgrade options are about as good as it gets from a 16-inch gaming laptop. Even the speakers hold up reasonably well compared to others. But it's not all perfect. The RTX 5060's fans run way too loud despite having lower power limits, while the 5070 version is stuck with a bulky charger when smaller high wattage ones definitely exist. Alienware's software is painfully incredibly slow to load after boot, and multiple early bugs with GPU power limits raise questions about quality control, even if multiple updates have fixed things now. The keyboard's dim backlight, tiny arrow keys, and small touchpad feel like compromises, and the 5060 configuration suffers much lower CPU performance when under CPU and GPU load compared to the higher spec option, though as we saw, it was still one of the best performing 5060s tested so far in games. Bottom line, I think there are a few too many compromises with the 16X considering its higher price tag. Better sales in future will certainly help, but right now it's just difficult to recommend over competitors that have better software, OLED screens, and offer more value. Personally, I'd go for Lenovo's Legion Pro 5 instead. It's lighter, has a better keyboard, a better screen, better CPU performance, quieter fans, and the option of RTX 5070 Ti graphics if you want to spend more to get more VRAM. But it's not perfect either. Check out my full review over here next so you know exactly what you're getting before spending your hard-earned money.